from the story of Paul that he had been arrested, that he declared that he wanted to go to Rome as a Roman citizen. He had the right to do so, and obviously from where he was they needed to put him on a boat. Around the islands of Malta, and in fact in the Mediterranean in general, there are seasons where it is safe to sail, seasons where it's less safe to sail, and seasons where you shouldn't sail at all. But if you were the owner of a boat and a crew and you wanted to make extra money, if you sailed at the wrong time, as in when it wasn't particularly safe to sail, and you got to your destination with your goods, because they were so happy to see you, because you had all the merchandise on board, you would get extra money. So it's only really money that caused the guy who was the owner of the ship that Paul was on to set sail at a time that really was quite dangerous. And as one could predict, he played the odds, he gambled, he lost. All of his cargo was thrown overboard, his ship was broken because he was shipwrecked. They were going to kill the prisoners on board, but Paul talked them away from that idea, and everyone very safely landed on the island of Malta. The island of Malta has no natural resources of its own. It is a lump of rock in the middle of the Mediterranean. It has no gas, it has no oil, it barely has water. They have to use seawater that they then take the salt out of. So if they took 10 gallons of this is today by the way, if they took 10 gallons of seawater, they would only get half a gallon of water out of it, because they have to put it back into the sea, saltier than it was. So they have no natural resources. And because of where they're located in the middle of the Mediterranean, they have been taken over by every force that has worked its way across the Med. Now, obviously, some of these took place after the time of Paul, but they've been taken over by the Ottomans, the Knights of St. John. They've been taken over by pretty much everybody who's tried to run past them has decided it's a really useful place for stopping ships and getting some food. So, why these people were welcoming, I have no idea. At the time when Paul landed on the island of Malta, they'd been taken over by the Romans, which lots of people had. As you can tell by their response, they even talk about how Paul has not escaped the goddess Justice. So they've gone to a polytheistic society. They essentially had to convert to whatever religion was the people who took over the island. And at this point, they had Roman gods. But they have nothing. The island of Malta grows very little. It does grow some of its own resources. It grows olives. And rabbit is very popular. I was offered game stew. I was like, oh, rabbit, which is what I'm assuming it was. But it's not exactly the most productive of islands. Why am I telling you this, apart from I'm vaguely interested because I've just come back? The people of Malta had very little. They have always been a poor people who have gathered their living from small agriculture. And yet, when this number of people, which is quite a large number of people, was it 247 or something like that, landed on the island of Malta, they were welcomed. They were fed. It says here, the islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us because it was raining and cold. Then they were taken to the house of, well done Helen, Publius. I always thought it was Publius.
I don't know.
No, well done, it is Publius.
Oh.
I've been to Publius's house, allegedly. There was an awful lot of, it is said that this is Publius's house. It is said that this is where the shipwreck happened. It is said, lots of that. So it might have been Publius's house, but I've been there. Publius being, as you can imagine, it sounds Roman, he was a Roman official, chief official of the island. He did not have to show generous hospitality to these people. Firstly, there were some sailors who were in it for the money, plus some prisoners, some of whom who were probably committed some terrible offences, and Publius welcomes them, one and all, and shows them hospitality for 3 days. After 3 months on the island, when the weather had returned to a more normal level, they had to go and continue their journey to Rome. And the islanders furnished them with all the supplies that they needed. How is it true, and it is true, and for those of us who are quite well travelled, we will know that it is the people who have the least who are the most generous. I've travelled to places in the world where people are living hand to mouth, eking their existence out of day labouring. And I've been to their houses and to pray for them, and they offer me fruit, they offer me a drink, they offer me something from what they have, which is so little. And yet the people who in this world who have so much are not as generous with what they have. How is it that that is the case? I think in here there is a call for us to be generous people. The Maltese weren't generous because they were Christians. Well, not yet. They were generous because they were people who saw other people in need. They were people who knew what it was to have nothing, and so they shared what they had with other people who they saw had nothing. We are called to be generous people. We are called to be welcoming. I put radical hospitality. I couldn't think of a title. Gerard keeps making me come up with titles for sermons, and I don't have them because sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say. Like today when I haven't got any notes. This radical hospitality, this welcome that they received, they didn't just give them food for a day, they fed them for 3 days, they looked after them for 3 months. They were given some accommodation to stay in. It wasn't the greatest, but they gave what they had. People gave out of the little they had, and they were, in return, they heard the gospel of Jesus. I read something recently and it said, if you meet me and you forget me, you have lost nothing. But if you meet Jesus and you forget him, you have lost everything. They gained from their encounter with Paul, a man who was a prisoner at this point, they gained everything. They gained a relationship with Christ. Because of their generosity, because of their welcome. Had they not fed prisoners and everybody, then nobody, they would have died and they wouldn't have been able to hear the good news of Jesus. 2,000 years later, Malta is, as I say, a Christian island. People worship Jesus. They may have got a bit carried away with the church building. I'm just saying. I mean, I know I'm kind of half Welsh and we got carried away with the church building as well, but, in this particular case, they might have got a bit carried away. I'm now going to tell you a joke. So a Welsh man is lost on a desert island. He's the only one there. Nobody knows he's there. Nobody's looking for him. So he's there for a number of years. And one day a boat sees that there's a fire on this island and they think, well, there must be somebody there. So they go to the island and they find this Welsh man. I can tell this joke because I'm Welsh. They find this Welsh man. And they said, do you want to be rescued? He said, well, that's lovely, he said. That'd be great, he said. But before I get on the boat, he said, can I show you all the work that I've done while I've been here? Okay, that's fine. He said, well, he said, over here, he said, this is my summer residence, he said. When the weather is good and the sun beats down and the waves lash gently against the shore, I stay here. And over there, he said, that's my winter residence. When the storms come, I stay there. The building over there, he said, that is my recreation area. I've made a pool table and I play pool. He said, this is my recreational area. And you see over here, he said, I've even built my own chapel. That's amazing, they said. But what's that other building over there with a cross on the top? Oh, he said, that's the one I don't go to. We can be a bit like that, can't we? That's the one I don't go to. This joke is totally irrelevant to my sermon. I just thought I'd throw it in. I must be thinking about islands or something. I have one more island joke. I might put that one in at the end. I'm going to write that down. Island joke. The other one has a point. That one's just fine. So this little island welcomed Paul and all the prisoners and the Roman guards who were presumably, part of the people who were holding them in captivity. The island had been taken over by the Roman Empire and they'd been forced to worship their Roman gods. Publius, an official, had been put in place to be in charge of the island. They were no longer in charge of their own destiny. And yet, here they are, sharing what they have. They made space for Paul. I put radical hospitality because, yes, there was that sense of welcome and feeding people and giving of what you don't have. And I thought about today, and I thought, what is it that we lack? Time, I think. We're so busy rushing around, and we fill our lives with things all the time. I do it. I watch TV. I watch TikTok. I waste hours when I'm trying to sleep at night playing games on the internet or possibly looking at YouTube Shorts videos, some of which are quite funny. And I waste time. That's the thing that I have less of today, because we're in this frenetic society where we're just busy all the time and we have to fill our time, and we can't have silence because we don't like it, so we fill our time. And I think that what we can give generously to people is our time, our attention. The greatest gift I think I have ever received from a friend was being able to talk to them without the feeling that they were going, waiting for the conversation to end, or they had something to rush onto. And I know in ministry you might allow an hour for a visit or something, or half an hour, but you have to be prepared to give people time if they need it. Time is a valuable commodity. I think I've said before, if I was to say to you, look, I've come up with this marvellous scheme for introducing people to Jesus, okay? It's going to cost £100 per person, but I guarantee 100% that £100 will see somebody in a relationship with Jesus who wasn't before. I know that some people in here would get out their checkbook, because we're a bit old, some of us, or get out a bank transfer, and we would do it, because £100 for a soul, that's a pretty good deal. But what if I were to tell you the truth of it isn't £100, there is no scheme like that, and if anyone tells you there is, they're a liar. 100 hours is more likely. 100 hours spent with somebody listening to their story. 100 hours spent with somebody helping them with their difficulties. 100 hours spent not necessarily telling people about Jesus, but being Jesus for them when that's what they need. Sitting down with people whose lives are broken and listening to them tell their story, sometimes on repeat, I must say. And we do that when we've had trauma. We tell the same story again and again and again. If you asked me about my brother, I would tell you the story, and it would sound the same as the last time you told it, because when we have trauma, when we have things that are difficult, we do that. And we have to be generous to people and listen, to take time, and to help people move on, to help people grow. And maybe in doing so, we earn the right to speak about our faith. When we have given of what we have, of our time and our energy, we earn the right then to talk of our faith. Sensitively. I've been to enough evangelism conferences in my life. I've probably led enough evangelism conferences in my life to know how to give the testimony of my life in 3 minutes. I can do that. They train you to do that. A minute from before you knew Jesus, a minute how you came to know Jesus, and a minute of what difference it's made. But if you're telling people about Jesus and they suddenly start to talk about the football or what was on TV last night or the political situation in the Middle East, it means they don't want you to continue talking. You don't have to get to the end of your 3 minutes. It's not like a competition where you've got to get it in. Sometimes we think, well, I have to get the whole gospel story in now. Sometimes it's drip feed, and you have to be sensitive to how people are. Part of radical hospitality is allowing people to lead the conversation. It's allowing them to move on. So if you say, as I sometimes do, oh, someone said to me this morning, what do you do for a job? So I told them. I said, I'm a church leader. Ah, that's great. He said, we have the Archbishop come through, I was working on the station this morning, come through the station, and we talked a little bit. But if they'd gone, oh, I'm a church leader, and they went, okay. That conversation is ended. That's not me, I now have an opportunity to explain how I came to do that and why Jesus loves them. No, radical hospitality is allowing people to set the pace of the conversation. You kind of put a little fishing line out there, like, oh, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went to church. What did you? Which church you go to? If people are interested, they will continue to ask. If people go, oh, I went to the football, they're not interested and they don't want you to continue. And actually, it's inhospitable and it's rude, but it's also contrary to the gospel to then enforce your opinion on them. We have to let people lead. That, to me, is part of radical hospitality. It's giving people space. Another part of radical hospitality is when people do decide to come to church and they want to be part of the church and they want to contribute to the church and they want to do some volunteering and they want to help out. Maybe they want to do a job that you're already doing. Maybe they want to do the welcome or do the tea and the coffee or do something that you already know how to do and could do backwards. And maybe they will do it not as well as you would have done it, which is quite difficult to watch, isn't it, folks? Let's be honest. It's difficult to watch people do something that you could do better. Sometimes God does say, well then, crack on with it. But we have to allow people space to give to the church and to volunteer and be part of it, even though they might be doing a job that we were doing and that we enjoyed, and that we probably did better than they're doing it right now. But part of their welcome is to welcome them and give them a space to be who they are, to be part of this fellowship. I think we are not bad at that, but we always have to remind ourselves that people feel part of a fellowship when they're giving to it as well, when they're contributing in some way. People don't just want to come to church to receive, they want to be part of something. And so we can give out of what we've got, and sometimes what we've got is what we're already doing, and sometimes what we've got is our time, and sometimes it's literally what we have in our hand. The other day I took somebody to get a food parcel from a local church, and they happened to have an excess of pork pies that were out of date that day. And I quite like a pork pie, not going to lie. So they said, oh, you might as well have one as well, because we've got so many. And I had this pork pie, and I was like, I'm looking forward to getting home, right? And I'm going to eat this pork pie. I'm going to eat half a pork pie. And it's in my handbag, and I'm like, I've got a pork pie. And then I ran into somebody I know who struggles with their finances and is in a really difficult state. And I gave them what I had, and all I had was a pork pie. So I never got to eat the pork pie, but it didn't cost me anything. And I gave it away. I did feel a little pinch of, I wanted to eat that. Do you know what though? God has blessed me with enough money to go and buy my own pork pie if it's what I want. But he hadn't done that for this guy. We give out of what we've got. That's how we're hospitable. And we give out of our time, and that's hard. And I don't think it's 100 hours, it could be 200 hours, and you could have to pay for the coffee every time. That is the nature of hospitality. It is costly, but oh my word, is it worthwhile? It is. Think about the people in your life who have given you their time, who have sat and listened to you, who have explained the gospel to you without ramming it down your throat, who have loved you enough to listen to your stories when sometimes you're doing some things that are a bit stupid and they haven't gone, gosh, that's a bit stupid. Those are the people who have welcomed you, and we have to welcome people too. So I said I'd finish on an island joke. This is my favourite church island joke. So, 2 men this time stuck on a desert island. This island has nothing. We think Malta has no natural resources. This thing's got 1 tree. That's it. And one guy is leaning against the tree in the shade, relaxed. And the other guy is running around going, we're going to die. We're going to die. We've got no food. We've got no water. No one knows we're here. We are going to die. And he runs up to the guy under the tree and he says, how can you be so calm? Don't you understand? We're going to die. And he said, yeah. He said, but I'm a Christian. He said, I admire your faith, he said. That's great. But we're still going to die. We've got no food and we've got no water. And he said, oh, you're not understanding me, he said. I earn £10,000 a week. Well, that is quite impressive. But we've got no food, we've got no water, no one knows we're here, and we're going to die. And he said, you're not understanding. He said, I'm a Christian. I earn £1,000 a week, and I tithe. If the treasurer doesn't find me, the minister will. I hadn't planned to tell that joke. I usually tell that joke if I'm talking about money, which is another way we can be hospitable, but that's a whole different story. We're going to have a song which you don't know.